Blessings in Jesus, dear friends. Welcome to Catching Up with Jacob. Jacob has caught up with an airplane today, and he has arrived back in Israel, where there's quite a lot going on and quite much discussion as the Islamic feast of Ramadan draws to its peak. There is an anticipation of further violence on the Temple Mountain and the area surrounding it, and that's one of the main features in the news in Israel this week, but also the increasing threat of Iran and the further alienation from the United States under the Biden administration, which is trying to make a peace deal with Iran. At the same time, Iran is stepping up not only its rhetoric, but its practical preparations for some kind of an attack. We see this already underway in Syria, where the Israelis are repeatedly engaging Iranian and Iranian-backed targets inside Syria, as well as Iran's hand in events in Gaza with Hamas and with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So Israel is focused on events concerning Iran, while the Biden White House is focused on trying to make a resurrection of the treaty that Obama tried to push through with Iran that was never even ratified by the Senate. At the same time, Iran is now into a rapprochement with Saudi Arabia, also thanks to the Biden administration, that was brokered by China. Now, this shows the loss of leverage and influence the United States has experienced under the present administration. Again, I do not plan to vote for Mr. Trump again for certain reasons, but I did vote for him the previous two times. Had Biden not been president, had Mr. Trump been elected or reelected, you would not have seen this happening with Iran. It would not be happening. You would certainly have not have seen the invasion of Ukraine by Mr. Putin, and you would not have seen China's saber rattling, nor North Korea's new ballistic missile aggression if Mr. Trump had still been the president. This is a weak president that the world knows is weak, that after his debacle in Afghanistan, the signal was sent to America's enemies. You have what's difficult to describe anything other than a politician general in Miley in the Pentagon, who himself raises questions of his loyalty to the United States when he is reported to have made the phone call to China during the last presidential election. Who was he to go above the head of his commander-in-chief and talk to a potential enemy? But that's what he did. Yet instead of being relieved of his command and ideally court-martialed, he's not been. If he's guilty of those things, that man should die in Leavenworth. Instead, he's still the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He and Austin, at a time when China and Russia are becoming more aggressive, are saying that the main priorities of the Pentagon have to be inclusivism and have to be climate control. This is what they're talking about. At a time when our enemies are becoming more aggressive, they are showing our enemies that they're wearing ladies' underwear. And I don't mean that as an offense to ladies, but I do mean it as an offense to feminine leadership that is not exuding any kind of male virtue. Now, believe me, I'd much rather have a Margaret Thatcher in the White House than a Joe Biden. Not all ladies are weak by any means, but she was not masculine. Biden, however, is feminine. He's surrounded by effeminate men, weak men. And he himself obviously is not in his right mind. He's somebody who he's a man of low intelligence anyway, just a professional politician. But now there's incipient dementia on top of it, in the opinion of any thinking person. Just look at the stumbling, bumbling nonsense he's been saying in Ireland, the land of his ancestors, and on my mother's side, my ancestors. Totally hideous. The situation in Ireland on the 25th anniversary of the so-called Good Friday Agreement is one in which the political climate has very much changed. The Sinn Féin party, who are the Irish nationalists, have made major electoral gains. And for the first time demographically now, the Irish Catholic population of Northern Ireland is overtaking the Protestant population. Things cannot continue the way they are there for an indefinite period of time. Something must change. The unionist parties are trying to hold on to what clutches of power remain. But this has particularly come to a head because of Brexit. Because of Brexit, what is going to be the status of Northern Ireland in a post-Brexit Britain, when the Republic of Ireland is still in Europe? It is a complicated debacle, and it's one of which Joe Biden does not even have the mental wherewithal to understand, let alone deal with. He just does what he's told by Obama's cronies. That's and the extreme left of the Democratic Party. But the world knows it. The world knows it. The only people I know of in the world, and I travel the world globally, I spend most of my time in the Middle East, Europe, Britain. The only people in the world who do not know that Joe Biden is a buffoon are the American left, or the Americans who voted for him. Now, let's look at what's happening in the United States, even as we speak. We have another person who's not like Mr. Snowden. He was someone from the Air National Guard of Massachusetts, a very liberal state, who has simply put in the public domain something that the establishment, the White House, and the mainstream media was trying to hide. Now, let's understand what's really, really going on here. 3 weeks ago, Schumer and the Democratic Party leadership was up in arms that Tucker Carlson released films showing what really happened on January 6th, that the Capitol Police was showing the demonstrators around, that it was not violent, it was not what the government lied and said it was, holding people without bail, behaving like a fascist regime. And when Mr. Carlson, Tucker Carlson, showed these films, it was considered an outrage because it exposed the fact that the government was lying, the Justice Department was certainly lying and is lying, and that the mainstream media collaborated in the lies. It exposed the networks, it exposed CNN and MSNBC and the Washington Compost and the New York Slimes for what they were. It exposed the fact that they were not telling the truth about January 6th. So the big uproar, the big outrage is not that the government lied. No, the mainstream media wants the big story to be that someone put out the proof that they lied. Now it's happening again. I'm not defending the actions of this individual or this individual. But what they're really uptight about, what they're really incensed about, is it shows the truth about Ukraine. We've been saying for months and months and months that things are not going as badly in Russia as we're being told. They're going badly, but not nearly as badly as we are being told by the American government or by the European Union. The powers in Europe and the United States have not been telling the truth about what's really happening in Russia as a result of the Ukraine. Yes, Russia has been hurt in certain sectors, but overall, Russia's economy will grow twice as much in 2023 as the American economy under Biden. That is the impact of America's leadership in terms of bringing these sanctions against Russia. It has not hurt Russia nearly as much as we're being told by the mainstream media, by our corrupt governments, and by the European Union, and by NATO. Not nearly as much. Not only that, the war itself is not going nearly as well. The Ukrainian casualty figures are astounding, astounding. Russia is willing to pay that price in human life. Yes, they've sustained a lot of casualties, a lot of fatalities, but Putin doesn't care. He's fighting for self-political preservation, among other things. He doesn't care. As we've said repeatedly, that Zelensky is nothing more than a lesser of two evils. He's not a good man. It's just that Putin is a worse one. We've not been told the truth by the media. I've seen corruption in the FBI, going back to the Contrapro operations of J. Edgar Hoover. I've seen what we then called the intelligence community, now called the deep state. I've seen their willingness to work against the national and public interest. None of these things are new to me or surprising. It's just that now it's happening on such a scale that there's no dissent against it. There's no real dissent against it from the left. The left buys into it and is controlled by it. Just look at Biden's proposals this week to force electric vehicle purchases in the United States to overtake combustion engines. Well, again, the stupidity of people who think electricity comes out of the wall. That is going to require fossil fuel generated energy. That's the only way you're going to get it. You couldn't build pebble-cooled nuclear reactors fast enough to meet his goal within the time frame that he says. Not only that, he's creating a windfall for China, who manufactures these lithium batteries and these other batteries and iron-based batteries. The environmental hazards of producing those batteries and of the mining of rare earth minerals are economically advantageous, but they are environmentally disastrous. Now, this just proves that the left, certainly the establishment, does not care about the environment. It shows they do not care about the environment. But to Mr. Biden, this is just another excuse to line China's pockets. He allowed the Chinese to put a reconnaissance balloon over some of the most important strategic defense sites in the United States. He allowed that. His son was on China's payroll. What's happening here? I find it very difficult to believe that Biden himself is not in all probability compromised. He may even be a Chinese asset, literally a Chinese asset. And I'm not exaggerating. That's how far it's gone. Men like Nixon were corrupt. They were willing to sell the country down the river. But Biden, Harry Truman sold the country down the river. He gave Eastern Europe to Russia on a silver platter. But Biden is willing to give America away. That is how far and how serious it has become. These things are undoubtedly of prophetic significance. But what is happening to the Western world, including the United States, is undoubtedly the judgment of God. We've turned our backs on him as a nation and a people. Finally, when you look at what's happening in the church, you look at what's happening with the church. One of Hollywood's big marketing efforts at the moment is to attempt to relaunch the acting career of Russell Crowe. A new Gladiator film, a sequel is being made, and he's not starring in it, but instead he is in a movie about exorcism and the Vatican. And this kind of theme is being mimicked by people involved in the New Apostolic Reformation. So at a time when persecution of believers is increasing, in the United States, certainly in Canada, in Great Britain, what is the reaction of the church? At a time when the transgender issue has reached a paramount where we're fighting over the future of our children, what is the reaction of the evangelical church? Is it radical evangelism? Is it confronting these issues? No, rather it is a stupid movie propagating the unscriptural notion of casting believers out of demons, something we've pointed out a number of times over many years that is never done in Scripture. The apostles, the early church, cast demons out of non-believers. Not one place is a demon ever cast out of a saved Christian in Scripture. It was never taught by the apostles. It is simply an invention of lunatics believed by ignorant Christians who are essentially unskilled in the Word of God and who have no discernment. And they're following these crackpots. Even Locke, the main filmmaker, ask him if he left his wife and took off with another woman and married her. What's he even doing in the ministry? What are any of these people doing? This is the state of the church. Now, I can go on about Biden, and I can go on about what's happening on the global stage and what's happening here in Israel. And it's important we note these things because they're all of prophetic importance. But what's most important is the state of the church. And the state of the church is as depraved as anything. as you will find in the Biden White House or in the Kremlin or in Buckingham Palace or anywhere else. That is the reality. Please bear with us. We're going to be exploring these issues now. I'm now going to hand this over to Marco. I'm away in the Middle East and we do have connection problems, but God bless you. Hope to catch you next week.